I want to welcome everyone to our program this evening on creative collaboration. As we begin, I ask that everyone keep their microphones muted. We encourage you to add questions into the chat or the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to take those as they come in, and we'll also leave some time for discussion at the end. We're recording the program, and the link to the recording will be available on Brandywine's YouTube channel in several weeks. I'm Mary Cronin, the Director of Audience Engagement at Brandywine Museum of Art. I'm told that it's Children's Authors and Illustrators Week, if you can believe what you read online, which is perfect because this evening we will be looking behind the scenes at the creation of a children's picture book, The Secret Garden of George Washington Carver. Original art from this book is currently included in Brandywine's exhibition, Rooted: Family and Nature in Contemporary Children's Book Illustration. Here's a view of the wall of that exhibition, the title wall, and then also a view of some of the work as it appears in the gallery. It's a beautiful, beautiful exhibition. I encourage everyone to come and see this exhibition in person. It features the work of 8 different illustrators of some amazing children's books. And I want to thank the 2 co-curators of this exhibition, at least one of whom is with us here tonight, Shadra Strickland, and I think Audrey Lewis may be joining us as well. Thank you, Shadra and Audrey, for putting together such an amazing exhibition. We had last Sunday was our first free Sunday of the month, and we had over 1,000 visitors come to the museum to view this show, to buy some of these books, and also to do some art activities with their families. So that was it was a lot of fun to share the exhibition with so many people. Oh, and I should say it closes on February 28th, so you still have just a few weeks to see it. Tonight, I'm pleased to welcome Gene Barretta, the author, and Frank Morrison, the illustrator, for a discussion about this award-winning book. Let me pull it back up here. There it is. The Secret Garden of George Washington Carver tells the compelling story of how the young botanist's early love for nature and his curiosity led him to create his own garden, which in time resulted in his distinguished career as an agricultural scientist and inventor. Among the accolades for this book are a nomination for an NAACP Image Award and also starred reviews from Booklist and the School Library Journal. And I know that it's been popular with schools. In fact, when we first went to get it for our shop, it was sold out. The hardcover was sold out for a time. So always good to hear. And it's been a very, very popular book. I'd like to start this evening with some introductions. Frank Morrison is a painter, illustrator, and author who has illustrated over 20 books. He's a 3-time winner of the Coretta Scott King Award, given annually to outstanding African-American authors and illustrators of books for children and young adults that demonstrate an appreciation of African-American culture and universal human values. A self-taught artist, Morrison began his career as a breakdancer and graffiti artist. His work has been shown internationally, and his artistic approach has been called a mashup of urban mannerism, graffiti, and contemporary abstraction. And let's see, I'm going to just take a minute, Frank, to talk to you just for a minute about how you came to be an artist and illustrator. And I hope you don't mind. I found this charming image on your website, and I'm not saying it's a self-portrait, but it is called The Artist. And I wonder if you tell us something about how you came to be an artist and illustrator.
Sure. Thanks for having me. This is man, this is amazing that I have a chance to talk about what I love to do and what I've been doing for so many years. I can't remember not being an artist or not drawing. My mom used to say I used to draw on the walls. Maybe that was the first signs of graffiti. Was that it? Drawing my bedroom walls, right? And so I've always drawn and always been drawn to art. I would find myself when I was a kid, I think any child would look at the cereal box, but then when you take the paper out and started drawing the characters on it, and we used to draw the Sunday comics and all that stuff. And so I always had a love of art. The thing I didn't realize is that there were so many avenues that you can go into when you're an artist. You know, I just thought you had to be in the museum. And so growing up, I was just painting and doing graffiti and all that kind of stuff. But one day when I was married, I decided I wanted to illustrate picture books because my children that I was married with kids, and I was like, I'm reading books by all my buddies that are artists. And I said, oh man, I want to go out and get a book deal. And I told my wife, I said, I'll be right back, hold dinner, give me a book deal tonight. That didn't do that well. I didn't do so well. But anyway, I ended up getting my first book deal with Leanne Lowe Books. And that's kind of the short story on how I became an illustrator. I really wanted to put work together or images together, like this little boy that we have on the screen right now. This is like clothing wise, it looks similar to somebody you would see today, somebody on the street today. This is like an ambitious child that has an art. You just know he's headed either to school or what's on his back is so important to him that he's lugging it around with him. And so I wanted to be able to show us, my kids and the kids around me in our community, to show them the way they look in books right now, but to portray that. And so that's one of the reasons why I get into it and why I love it. And then, like Gene, you'll attest, and Sajra, I keep messing her name up.
Shadra, yes.
Sajra, she's gonna shoot me. It's all about seeing those reactions from the kids, and when they say that's me, that's me, that's me. I love that, man. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about for me. Just being able to emulate what I see every day and get those wonderful reactions from the children when they see themselves in the books.
That's great. And I found this image of you. Actually, yeah, you sent this along, and I know that you do fine art as well. You do your own art. And it's shown, as I said, internationally. And some of that it has more of a graffiti style inspiration. So what inspires you with that art?
Well, graffiti has always been something that was prominent to hip hop. I grew up, like you said, as a break dancer. I grew up as all these things. And what ends up happening is you mash them together when you become an artist and you figure out what you want to do. And when you figure out what you want to do, you want to try to figure out things that you can relate to. And when you can relate to these things, it comes out with love on the canvas. And because I was into graffiti, I was into breakdancing, I started emulating that in my fine art. Because if you go to New York right now, you're going to see trees have leaves and buildings have graffiti. So how could you not add that into, especially if I know how to do it? How could I not add that to what I do?
Excellent. Good idea. All right, we're going to switch gears for a moment, and I want to introduce Gene Barretta. He's an award-winning author and illustrator. We had a question already, Gene, in the chat, and someone said, I'm surprised Gene's the author of this book. So we're going to get more into that shortly, because Gene has written and illustrated numerous books for children, including the one seen here, The Bat Can Bat. And Gene's other creative endeavors are many and include animating short films for Sesame Street and designing characters for the Muppets. And I think you're in this space, Gene, but I wanted to share this photo of your studio. And before we hear more about how you approach this book, can you tell us about yourself? How did you get started doing not only writing, but illustration? So you do both.
Right. Well, I started as an illustrator, and it's kind of a career that came later in my life. I was working in film and television industry for a little while. And then I moved back east. I was in LA for a little while. And so I started doing some work with Sesame Street because I had some connections there. My brother's involved with the Muppets in a big way, and I know all those people. And so one of the Muppet performers introduced me to one of the producers at Sesame Street. I presented some ideas for animation and was able to do a few films for them. And then through them, I started working with another children's television show and did books for them, which brought me to the publishing world. And so I started illustrating books before I started writing them, and did that for a number of years and found an agent. And eventually I realized what would be my next step. I've always loved telling stories, which is why I went into the film industry in the first place. And I thought I'll give give writing a shot. And my first book as a writer and illustrator came out in 2006, which was all about Ben Franklin's inventions and how we use them today, called Now and Ben. And I've done mainly nonfiction books. I did just one fictional one, Jack the Tripper, which is sort of like a boy who cried wolf type story. And have been writing and illustrating my own for a while. And Debbie, well, let me mention too, I've also started writing for other illustrators, which leads into Debbie's question, wondering why I didn't illustrate this. And it's because this book was Frank's idea, right? Frank, you brought this idea. We have a mutual agent, and so does Shadra. And so, Frank, didn't you bring this idea to Laurie, our agent?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he wanted to do the book on Carver, but didn't have a manuscript, and she knew that I was getting a reputation for biographies, and so she teamed us up, and so we approached a number of, she pitched it around for a while, and we met Ben Rosenthal at HarperCollins, who said, I want to do 2 books on key moments in the childhoods of African-American children that have become, major icons. And he said, I want to start right with that, Muhammad Ali, which we then did before the Carver book and later came back to Carver. So this was our first collaboration here in Muhammad Ali, A Champion is Born.
Okay.
You know what I love about these books, man, is I didn't know the history. I kind of had a general idea of the history of Muhammad Ali, but I didn't know it. I didn't know about the bike. I didn't know about, so you get to learn about, all these things that, I knew, hey, you could float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I knew that, and I know he had punches you couldn't check, but then you get to learn how he grew up. Then you get to do the research. And I think the research part is so fulfilling. That is really fulfilling when you work on these history books.
Yeah, because you don't, when oftentimes I'll bring my idea to my agent to have done, but when a project is brought to me, of course I know who Muhammad Ali is, but like you, I didn't know that much beyond what everybody tends to know. And so I had to think, will I even like this guy? Because I have to kind of write about somebody I like, or else it's, not going to be very effective, or probably not going to pass on some kind of inspiration for the kids reading it. Yeah. But I ended up, loving the guy. And but that's always a risk too, because so Debbie Curran, that's why I didn't illustrate this one, because it was Frank's idea, and he, so he took on, he was planning on illustrating it before I was even brought in to write it.
Yeah, so that's interesting, Gene, and actually gets me to my next question, which is, I wondered, because I know about your background in film and in illustration, does that change the way you write at all? When you're writing, do you find yourself thinking of what the visuals might be?
Well, I can't help not visualizing what I'm writing, but this, I knew before I was starting that this was going to be a challenge, because you think you're spending, months, maybe more than a year putting something together, and then you have to just hand it off to somebody else to bring visuals to it. It might be completely different than anything you ever imagined. And I knew authors who don't illustrate, and I always felt sorry for some of them who would give it away and then just really not like where it went from there. So I knew Frank's work, so I had a lot of faith that that it wouldn't be a disaster, of course. And I was just I ended up just loving what he would contribute. And what was nice too is, if I give it off like that, then when it comes back to me, it gives it a whole new, fresh appeal for me, and it makes it surprising and exciting, and it brings the whole life of the book back for me, because now I'm seeing it in a more objective way than just the way I had pictured it to start. But but when I was first asked to do this, I said to my agent, "Frank's going to illustrate this. Have you seen his work?" Because I questioned her judgment. But then she, gave me a little bit of cash, and I.
My man. Oh, man.
I can see through this
No.
collaboration, you two have developed a great respect for one another.
I would say hate, but respect is a good word too.
Yeah.
Hate or respect.
So let me think. So it's like you put it in the oven, you mix it up, you put it in the oven, and then I bake it, and you don't know what you're going to get later. Gotcha.
Right. Sometimes it's burned, sometimes it's delicious.
Oh man.
My goodness.
Oh man. Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
what's the next one?
So let me just think, Frank, I was going to ask you if there was anything, what made you think of George Washington Carver? Did anything stand out? Like you said with Muhammad Ali, you only knew those cliche things. Did you know anything particular about George Washington Carver?
I was back in the day, I would go off, parents would send their kids to the South. Hello?
Okay, go with me.
Oh, whoops. Just muted
Parents
somebody.
Parents would send their children south in the summer sometimes, and I had went one year and visit cousins, stay with cousins for the summer, and you come back. And one year I stayed with my aunt, and she had a farm she had like a garden behind her house. And we grew up with a garden, and my garden my grandmother had was maybe about a couple yards. It wasn't that big. It was we would tend to it. She had about 6 rows. And when we went to the South and I looked at the garden behind that yard, it was a field that you couldn't see the end of. And I remember this tree behind it. And there's all this agriculture that was always around me. She had a nice, pond in the front of the house and the whole nine, but it was all about the land. And when we come together, everyone would have like the reunion, the family reunion, be on someone else's land. And I was always curious about that whole farming. And so when I read about this with George Washington Carver, and then how he with the peanut, and then everything about that, I was like, wow, this would be a great story that children would be able to, especially with my spin on it, with my little, my way of my mannerisms adding to the story. I thought it'd be an interesting revisit for children to see it from our perspective, and I thought that would just be a great story,
Definitely. I mean, I think let me go on to the.
Do you want me to just for people who aren't that familiar with him, should I just give you like a little nutshell?
Yeah, I was just going to get into I was just going to say that, he's such a well-known historical figure. And as Frank mentioned about, I think we all would know the peanut that he's famous for, but it's a much bigger story. And Gene,
we're going to give the story away? We're going to give it away?
No, we're just going to give a couple highlights. Gene's going to just tell a couple highlights.
Well, a lot of people think he invented peanut butter, but that's not the case. It was invented by, I had to write this down, Marcellus Gilmore Edson, a Canadian chemist in 1884. But what he's known for is having, he was an agriculturalist and a scientist and an inventor, and he experimented with the peanut and the soybean and the sweet potato, and came up with over 300 ways to use these foods. And what was also wonderful about this was post-Civil War, and the South was ravaged, and they were growing cotton, and cotton just kills the soil. And he showed farmers how soy and sweet potatoes and peanuts were beneficial to the soil, and they were more economical, and he helped revive agriculture in the South, and also had something called a Jessup wagon, which was an educational wagon. And he would take this wagon. This is after he became a teacher at Tuskegee. He would go around to all the different farms, the African-American families who were now living free and had independent farms, and he taught them how to be self-sufficient, which was another amazing feat of his. And so he became like a folk hero for doing all of this with the peanut and the sweet potato and the soybean. And it goes beyond that, but that's, the major reason why we know him and we talk about him.
Absolutely. Was there anything that you learned in your research that surprised you, either one of you?
Do you, Frank?
The secret garden.
Right.
Secret garden. Exactly, you know, just to go out and just create that way. You know, of all the things you do in a day, who'd want to go and plant? Like that was a calling. It was a calling, you know, and this like how you write and how I paint, he was drawn to the land. And just to have that, he knew his purpose in life. And I think that's what we have to resonate. I think it was these all stories of what the stories are telling everyone is that we're enough. And we have enough that we can work around. We're, you know, we don't have to follow everybody's lead. You know, I can't dunk a basketball the way I used to be able to dunk it. And so I leave it up to Gene when I play basketball with him to dunk, you know.
Just toss it to me. Toss it to me.
And I can care less. You know, he's a better dunker than I am. He can dunk. Right? But I know I can paint. So, and that's what I do. I just, you know, I want children when I go out, you know, we all have talents, we all have gifts. It doesn't make sense to follow everybody else's talent unless it's drawn to yourself. And I think when you see what he did with that secret garden of his and cultivating that, I think that was really what I was really inspired by. I was really shocked with that part. Yeah.
You know, what you brought up there plays into something that I also tried to put across in the story. I think one way that kids today can identify with it is that he was not, you know, he was an original human being. He stood up kind of outside of the norm. And in town, he was a little, you know, like people probably thought he was like some quirky kid who just wanted to go play, you know, in his garden. And so he's a great representation to kids today that, you know, you don't have to follow the norm and you can be quirky and nerdy and have, you know, a unique personality and interests. And there's room for you. So I like that about it too.
Yeah.
Definitely. It definitely follows that train along and just his single-minded pursuit of his interest. I think that surprised me that it was from his childhood, really. And one of the interesting things about the format of the book, I thought, is the fact that it's sort of told almost through flashbacks. So we see him as an adult and we see him as a child. So we're seeing, and I put up these two images, Frank, of yours from the book. And I just wondered, how did you sort of link the person together so that when we're reading the book, we always know who this character is? Was there any physical characteristic of his that you focused on, or?
Oh, it was AI. It was AI. You know?
It was AI.
So was the writing. Hey, so was the writing. What do you know?
No, it's you know, you do the research, man, and that's the great thing about, you know, it was where when I first started becoming an artist, made the decision I was going to become an artist. I didn't have books. I couldn't afford books. I went to the library, and when I went to the library, man, it would be like a fantasy world. You buy books, you find books on Picasso, Rembrandt, you know, all the big names. Then I started studying futurism and checking out these books. And what I learned how to do was research. It taught me how to research and knowing the importance of having a physical book in the hand. Now I have hundreds of art books now. But when it came to being able to research the identity for the look for George, what I did is I went and did the research again. This time I did go online and picked out images of what the clothing looks like, what the hairstyles may be. I picked out and I found that, you know, I just wanted to make sure I could make him. I couldn't make it as close to him because I didn't know what he looked like as a child. So I picked different characteristics like his nose and his lips. And I said, okay, I could build around that to give a general idea of what he would look like as a child. So I did that kind of CSI. Is that CSI program you watch every day? I did CSI.
Tell the truth. He sent the notes to me. I did the initial illustrations, and then he got his crayons and he filled it in.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks, my man.
Well, it's funny that, you know, like there's a lot of talk now about, you know, AI, the role of AI in things like children's books. But in fact, I just want to say to the people listening in, if you've not seen these works in person, when you do see Frank's work in person, you will be astounded by its beauty, and you can see those brushstrokes of these beautiful oil paintings. These works are done in oil, and really, you know, beautifully painted, not something that I think we're in danger of AI hopefully taking over, because
They were so, they're so
somebody asked
large.
a question, Stacy asked a question of both of you, if you have a favorite medium that you use for illustrating children's books, and do you think digital art is changing the industry at all?
First, I just want to say I was shocked when I saw the size of Frank's paintings, because I had only seen prints of them that were sent to me. But there, you know, the cover is, do you know the size offhand, Frank?
About, go up again, go that way, go this way again, about that size. No, that size.
I just put it up on here it is on the gallery wall.
There you go.
Okay. I'm not sure. I think it's either 30 by 40, or it might be, I'm not really sure the size of it, to be honest.
Yeah, they're huge.
But that was a point I was going to make too, is that this work is full scale. It holds its own in an art gallery on the wall. It looks beautiful reproduced in a book that you hold in your hand, but as individual works of art, this works. It really does.
And that's what I try to bring to the book world, is that I'm trying to mash the two together. And I would say, what would I want to see on my wall? What would I want to see on my wall? You know, because I know a lot of these books are sometimes these children's first museums. This is the first art gallery they get to see. And so I'm like, okay, how would they want to see this in a gallery? You know, and so I have given them that perspective. Now, my medium the choice of medium that I work in is oil and spray paint, when I can get away with it.
You didn't use spray paint in these though, right?
What?
That didn't,
I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. No, not in this book. I couldn't get away with it here. I couldn't get away with it. Yeah.
Mine is watercolor. I always work in watercolor. Yeah.
So very, very traditional art media.
Yeah.
So
but so digitally, I don't think it's gonna harm the children's book industry, because it is such a broad place to work. There's every kind of style you can imagine that they welcome. You know, there's, aside from just digital and paint, there's cut paper, and there's I think you have some examples in this exhibit, in the Rooted exhibit, where there's cut paper, and there's just, it's endless as far as what kind of media you can bring into the books.
I love digital art. I mean, I think it's amazing. I think what they can do with it, it actually inspires me to and influences some of my work, seeing some of the brilliance that they're able to do. And I think what is his name? The Caldecott is a digital rendition. I think that's digital, right? Big. I think that's so I have no problem. I think it's a great medium. And I love how they can expand and do things. And I'm telling you, I look at it, I have a bunch of books here, magazines that's digital. So I'm not a digital hater.
Yeah, no, not at all. The AI I have a problem with in many ways, but digital I don't mind at all either.
No, I don't. Yeah.
Okay, so it's okay for the digital. Let's see, Chandra asked also, Frank, what was it like painting so much nature, as opposed to, it seems like a lot of your work is more urban based, more cities.
I had to go get a lot of green paint. I ran out quite often. More screen. You know, it was weird. I went out, and believe it or not, any chance I can add a book to it, I do. I went and bought a book on, there was a painter of light, because he did a lot of, I forgot, Thomas Kincaid.
Thomas Kincaid, yep.
Yeah, I bought one of his books. I was like, wow, I wonder how I can incorporate some of those scenes into what I'm doing now, or at least, see some influence, something like that. But I just bought a bunch of books on agriculture, Better Homes and Gardens. I borrowed that from Gene. I got to give that back to you, man. But nature is different. I had to find sometimes I had to find one of the pages. I think I twisted the tree a little bit. So I try to throw my little rhythm into it. But it's it's fun. It's fun. I prefer to paint, spaceships. But this is different for me, and I enjoyed it.
This is an example of, you asked me how things changed once I handed it over to Frank. For some reason, I always pictured a smaller forest environment, and he expanded that to a much larger, more beautiful wooded setting.
Yeah, he has to be hidden away. It was a secret garden. We were off the side, so you had to make that mystery. It was shrouded in this whole forest. I should have threw some chipmunks in. I should have threw some more chipmunks in.
Frank, was there anything you did with the illustrations? Like when I look at this one, I feel like it has like a timeless quality to it, and it is there's a little bit of mystery, like what's happening here with this plant. Was there anything you did to try to sort of connect with kids today to bring them in?
The light in the eye. He's just sitting there, watching his plants grow. It's like a solitary moment for him. And just think all the things he could have been doing that day. He's planting the garden. He's getting away. And this is really where this is the other thing I try to promote is like getting out of the house, doing something, exercising, getting out. A lot of times we're drawn into our phones or to these, video games or things like that, and we lose that outside adventure. And that's what I try to promote in the books. And I think, he's showing that he's not, he's out here in the world in creating. There's no telling what he's going to find that day. Maybe it's a ladybug, or maybe it could be something, a butterfly or something like that might go through, but this is just about getting out, Definitely.
Absolutely. And that's something that it's a great message for kids now. Gene, what do you think, who do you think is the intended audience for this book? Is there an age, like with the writing, the reading level?
Well, usually I shoot toward, grades 2 to 5. It's elementary school, but with nonfiction books, it can always go broader. I remember hearing one of those Jeopardy champs say that he read picture books all the time because it was a great way to summarize a topic and get all the key information. So it's always there for that, for adults, but usually I'm writing in a language that will work best with elementary age kids.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying about looking at picture books for research. I can remember many times going to the children's section of the library when I needed to research something. This was as an adult, because I always felt that in a children's book, you were really going to find that content sort of condensed and really the essence of what you needed to know, as opposed to reading some 3-volume set on the same topic, maybe. So I think that makes sense. And so really this book can work definitely for older ages as well.
And that's been the learning curve on writing for picture books, which is so different from anything else I've written in either script form or short story form, because you really have to learn how to write concisely and in a way that doesn't feel like you're trying to cram too much in, because in nonfiction you've got to not only describe who your character is, you've got to set the period and talk about what either what they're making, or there's so much to get in there, but you have to learn how to do it in a way where you tell a lot with a little. And it takes a while to kind of find that, it's a learning curve.
Definitely. And then the pictures bring so much more to it, the illustrations. I love this one in particular. I think something I never thought about was the fact that Carver really combined art and nature in what he did. That I was fascinated to learn that he was doing pictures of these plants as well as growing the plants. That was part of his scientific method.
Yeah, he studied them at all stages of their life, And that was something that surprised me in my research, was that he painted.
Yeah.
And he was a musician too. He played the accordion, and he just multi-talented. Yeah.
Wow, we left that part out. I don't know. The accordion, we should have.
Yeah, I know. He played the polka. He was great at the polka.
And that's the fun thing about researching, it's like the History Channel in books. That's what we're doing right now. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like playing detective. That's what it's my favorite part of making a book is when you get a chance to just play detective and go visit interesting places that have to do with your subject and meet interesting people, and everything about it is fascinating. It's because it's my introduction to the project before. It's just like the same feeling that I'm hoping someone will get when they first read my book. That's the stage that feels the same for me.
Yeah.
All that. Yeah.
That feeling, yeah, that discovery that you find. Oh, I just skipped one that I really wanted to look at, because Frank, you mentioned Thomas Kincaid, Painter of Light, and I'm just sort of chuckling because one of the things that I love about these illustrations is where you have brought in this feeling of light, and it was something that I was in the gallery today, and someone was pointing that out to someone in the gallery just by happenstance as well, that look at the light in these illustrations.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely wanted to do it. It was enlightening. You're getting to see something you would not expect, because I was not expecting this part of the book. I didn't know he built it. I didn't know he had a garden. And then you think about how do you water that garden? How do you take care of that garden? What do you use as tools? Where do you get the tools to hold the lines to actually plant? Where do you get the seeds from? Right?
I can tell you about the water. The garden was close by to a stream, so he pulled it from there.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I don't see it in your pictures, Frank. What happened, man?
Thanks a lot.
No, but I can see it. It's right behind that tree over
There
on
you
the
go.
left.
There you go. They cropped that out. I don't know who does that. Thanks, Gene. Thanks a lot. Really. Anyway,
No, he ran a hose out from the cabin.
yeah, there you go. There you go.
He had a sprinkler, and he ran through the sprinkler when it was hot.
Oh my goodness.
All
right. So more serious question. Chandra is asking, Gene, how long was the writing process and the research process for this?
Oh boy. It was probably 4 or 5 months, I guess. Well, the research was probably about 3 or 4 months, and then the writing was probably 5 or 6 months between the different revisions and things. And I always like to, aside from all the other places I find my research, watching films about him or videos and reading books about anything I can. And I always like to find an historian that specializes on my subjects too. Find somebody reliable to fact check. So I also have to just, I'll send it off and get revision ideas from them, all of that. So yeah, it's different for each book, of course, depending on how complex the character is. But for this, I think it was the whole writing from research to handing in the final draft, half a year or something like that. Yeah.
And then how long did the images take? Did the illustrations take, Frank?
It takes about anywhere between 3 to 4 months for me to illustrate. And what people may not realize, it takes about 100 drawings to make a picture book. It takes about 100 drawings.
Wow.
Yeah, from thumbnail sketches to final art. Yeah, it takes quite some time.
Interesting. Yeah, I know. You're dedicated. I remember Gene had a child ask this kind of question at a program we did this fall, and I think the child was surprised to realize this book had been in progress like since the time the child was born. Right, the child was like 5 years old, and it was like it started 5 years ago, and it didn't take 5 years, but but the point is, it doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time, and then there's probably back and forth. Now, did you two have any ongoing connection? Like, Gene, you did the writing and then passed it over. Was there any more back and forth at that point?
Well, first, let me also add too that's why sometimes people like Frank and I will be juggling projects, because we will send off notes and then we have a period of time where we can't do anything with it. So we're starting another project, and we keep, there's a couple projects usually going at once. So we can pick them up and put them down and shift them around. But I should, something that many people just aren't aware of is that writers and illustrators rarely meet in the book industry. And there's a reason for that. One is the main one is that you just don't want to step on each other's toes, and you're never really connecting with each other pre getting the book published. And I should say to any aspiring authors out there, if you're going to approach a publisher with your idea, do not get it illustrated first, because that's counterproductive. They want to be the ones to match up an author and an illustrator. So handing them something that's already illustrated might be counterproductive. But so we didn't, I don't remember when we first started talking during the Muhammad Ali project, but it was usually not so much about the work itself as to just, we were just getting to know each other and having fun. And the only time, like the editor, Ben Rosenthal,
Great editor, my man.
he would send me sketches and things just so I could look, not to comment on his art, but to just make sure that it was factual, some of the images were factual, like, maybe how the beakers might have looked in the lab or things like that. Otherwise, we just left each other alone with whatever we did.
Yeah, and you mentioned the beakers in the lab, and there it is. But this was interesting because I feel like it was important to show him actually in the lab. I like that this was part of the story, too.
Yeah.
So much of his life was spent in those rooms.
Yeah, and just to show kids sort of, here he is actively being a scientist. Yes, he was a kid and he had this garden, but then it does lead to a real career for him and real discoveries.
And when and what kids will read in the book is that when he first showed up at Tuskegee, it was just in shambles. It was, it was a fairly new school, and the equipment he had was like prehistoric. He was using, he was rigging things together from trash and things to do his experiments. So it started, he persevered through just the technical end of getting his experiments done. Went from there.
Yeah, it's definitely a story of someone who had to keep moving forward, like one step forward, and then he got hit 2 steps back, but then he kept advancing. And here he is at Tuskegee with Booker T. Washington. So this is one, Frank, where I guess you did have to do some research to just get these characters right, these people's appearance.
Especially Booker T. He's such a known person. This is Carver when he's younger, so I had some liberty with that. But Booker T has that, so he has a very distinctive look. I think I grabbed this image from, he was on a horse or next to a horse. And so I grabbed something from there, and then I just added my little mannerisms to it. Yeah.
It's definitely adds your style, but but he's a recognizable character. Both of them are.
Yes, definitely. Could you imagine those conversations? Jeez, right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Yeah, right? Goodness.
Wow.
Interesting.
Carver was pretty crushed when Booker passed away, because they would argue a lot, but in a constructive way, and had a real deep connection for each other.
Yeah.
And this is one, I don't have the best slide of this one, but this is one of the images I just really enjoyed from the book, just because I do feel like kids will relate to this. This again, it seems somewhat timeless. It's just that idea of him, he's out on his own. It's that moment in the book where he like goes off on his own, and I think he's only, I don't know, 12 or 13.
Yeah. That was amazing. He just he crossed like 4 or 5 states on his own.
Yeah.
And this is during a time when it was dangerous to be a kid like him. So yeah. I'm sure he escaped when he was in Kansas. I forget which town it was, Fort Smith or something. He witnessed a murder and got out of there really quickly, because he was in fear of his life, I'm sure, more than once. But he made it all the way up through, he went through the different states working as a cook and a gardener and all sorts of things, and then found his way to Ohio State, where he finally was the first African-American graduate. And he was nonstop as far as what he was achieving at such a young age, and by himself.
Isn't that something? Jeez. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And his GPS was broken too, so he had a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this image here also, I think, is important to share that, and it's an important moment in the story because there's all these moments where he's solitary, but here you really see his passion for sharing his knowledge with others. He really was a teacher as well as a great scientist. The reason we all know his name isn't because of what he did in the lab, really. It's because he got that information out to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the women.
Each one. Uh-huh.
What'd you
There's a
say?
saying that we use in our community. It's each one teach one, and as you climb, you lift. And it's spreading knowledge back and to your family members that may be coming up, and sharing that wisdom to the community. And so you better the community, you better yourselves. Just like I'm sure you meet other writers and you show them or you give them some instruction, and it makes that art. Have you ever met any artists or writers that that you instructed or influenced?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I was mentored by, I mean, Judy Schachner and E.B. Lewis mentored me when I was getting started. And I try to offer a hand like that whenever I can with people coming in, because it's got to be a cycle like that. And I wanted to mention too, I was just talking about how he moved through the different states. At one point, he was staying with the Watkins family, and this woman, the mother, Mariah Watkins, who taught him not only a lot about how to use plants for medicine and for dyes and things like that, but she gave him she had a quote where she said, "Learn all you can, George, then give it all back to our people," which is the same idea.
Yeah, it's always about that. Definitely. Whenever I do an art show, I make sure that we're doing something that we give back to the community. So the last one we did, we give away books. We always give away picture books, and we always have like a writing or a drawing course that I do with the children, just to help them out. Because I can imagine, I didn't grow up knowing that, like I said, this was even a career. And so it's like I try to spread it amongst all the young children I can, let them see that this is a possibility. And I may not be the perfect guy out here, but at least it's a possibility.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah, we do that, by bringing real actual artists in too at Brandywine for some of our events. We hope that kids will get that idea as well, by learning from teaching artists, and especially with these exhibitions of illustration, it really is a great connection to kids, and for them to think about a future career, as you say. Not only learn from the book, but it's something they might do themselves.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
And now this image is this is beautiful. It really is beautiful. And so the book basically ends at sort of at the end of his life. And he's looking out at a field of flowers and just thinking about, you can imagine he's thinking about his life's work.
Yes. Wow.
And he did it every morning. Every morning he walked through the woods, and just in a very, it was kind of a meditative experience for him before his day started.
Wow.
And Frank, when you created this one, what was your thought? Like, we don't see his face. What was your thinking behind that?
Oh, he's just, he's reminiscing. He's reminiscing. I grew up in New Jersey, and so we would break dance, but we'd also have woods in our backyard. We have woods, and we would make clubhouses and tree houses. We'd go through we'd make trails. You have to have a stick like he had, and you have to knock down the weeds to actually make the trail. And then the weeds would go back the next day or so, and you have to knock them back down and make the new trail. And sometimes we would get to these oases that were just these openings, and it would be by the river. And I was like thinking about that when I drew this. When I painted this, you're like, oh wow, this is all this green grass that's flat out of nowhere, and we would think that we were in like some kind of theme park or something like that. So our imagination would flow, And so I was like, wow, maybe I'll capture some of those moments in the book, and I think I did on this one, because I'm kind of awestruck looking back at this, because it goes, you don't see a horizon line, but it just goes on. It just keeps moving, you know. And it's so, and I guess because this is his last lookout before he passes away. It's almost like heaven's behind the woods, right? Light behind. Yeah. Wow.
Well, you you painted a picture now with words too, Frank, I think, in addition to the image, but I think it's powerful because it's personal to you. And I think that comes through, that sort of that feeling of awe as you look out at this image. And because we see him silhouetted, I feel like we can all relate, like we're there with him having that same experience. So it's a really effective, it's an effective illustration.
That was,
and then I want to say
like, go ahead.
Oh, I want to say this is what, see kids, you get out and you remember these experiences in life, and you paint them over, and it gives you more, it gives the painting or that piece or that picture more impact, because you're putting more of your emotions, what you felt that day, into the work.
I was just going to say that I think, like, I witnessed something just now with you, Frank, because he's such a prolific artist. I mean, he just goes like nonstop. And there must be times where you finish a painting and then it just goes off your easel and you don't see it again for another 5 years. And it seemed like that just happened here, where you revisited this and kind of took it in and, you know, had a connection with it. Does that happen to you much?
Not often. I normally, when I'm painting a book, or I just, you know, we'll store it away and we're working on another one. And
that's
like I'm working on, you don't get personal. You don't, no, it doesn't happen quite often, because I have all my books on the shelf, but it's not like we go back and we read them over and look at them.
Right.
You know, it's like you're constantly working. So it is special when you do get to see your books, when you get to see a page like this. And it brought me back to the day. And I'm, you know, that summer, that hot summer, hazy, actually it was a hot summer day where the dew was coming up, and it really put me back. I'm looking for the what's the name? We used to have the raft. We used to have a raft back then. Yeah, but that's another story.
That's great. And as we're getting to the end here, I wondered if you would each say something about why you think picture books are important. And maybe Frank, do you want to start about?
Man, you know what? I love Egyptians, like the whole hieroglyphs. I'm sorry, I stutter.
Hieroglyphics. Yep.
There you go. Pardon me. Jeez, I didn't have my third cup of coffee yet. And if we didn't look at these images, we wouldn't know what the Egyptians looked like back in those days. There wasn't an architecture that was left behind in those ancient ruins. We wouldn't know what Rome looked like. Art has always been a factor in human society, whether it be from painting on walls to cavemen, and you saw them with those little spears throwing things against these things that was 10 times their size. So art has always been there. Picture books allow us to bring art to children, sometimes for the first time. Now they have something that's not on a wall that they can look at, that they can't touch. It's framed, it's behind the glass frame, or it's mounted on a wall. Now they have it in their hands. They can turn the page and they can draw in it. I had gotten a book back that I bought years ago, and it came in, and it was a used book of mine. You know, I hadn't seen it in years. When I got it, the pages were ripped, torn, bent. And I was like, they really enjoyed this book. They really enjoyed this. And I was like, I treasure that, you know? And I think we have an opportunity to bring art and stories to children, to the masses. And we're so blessed to be able to, like Gene is working on some new stuff that I've seen. He can bring what we see today into that work. So they can say, when they read this book to their children, not only is this kid, this is what we used to wear back then. Look at this shirt. This is our style. This is our hairdo. And they can, you know, I just think that's just a very important thing about children's books. We're able to capture the moment. That's it.
No. I could just add to that it's also, you know, they've been talking about how we're moving kids away from picture books too quickly, because it can really help improve reading comprehension in many ways, because you're putting you're connecting images to vocabulary as you're learning vocabulary, and you're
Mhm.
you're putting facial expressions and movements and tones and all these things that help you remember the true meaning of a word in not just letters, but in images. And I mentioned how the Jeopardy guy uses it, because it summarizes well. But yeah, there's so much to take from the experience of putting the two together that we're going to miss if we take kids off picture books too soon.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and there's
that's
people
an
making
important-
comments about wishing that we had more pictures in adult books, illustrated books. And someone points out also how graphic novels,
Yeah.
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah.
popular.
Love.
And something we always talk about at Brandywine is, because we're an art museum, is we'll talk about how the illustrator brings a new dimension to a story, adds a dimension to a character that maybe isn't in the words. They can add that extra dimension. And I think that definitely has happened here with this story. Really, really an exciting book, a beautiful book. Before we finish up, I just real quickly want to ask you both about see what's coming next and what you might be working on. And Frank, I know I got a couple pictures. Your assistant sent me a couple pictures, so hopefully you remember this one. This one looks like a nice change of pace and fun. I got the spooky spirit. So is this one out now?
No, I believe it comes out in October. Hopefully it comes out in time for
Oh,
Halloween. Halloween. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh,
Check this out.
that's a lot. Oh gosh, right? Isn't it?
That's something to look forward to. And then also this book looks fascinating. My block looks like.
My block looks like, there goes the graffiti. And of course, there's my daughter's name, Tiffany. She's right in there. Tiff is right there.
Oh, great. A couple images.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that face. Look at that
Isn't
hair.
that special? Those cheeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that really looks fun. Really looks interesting. One more from this one. I just love the perspective.
Yeah.
What a great perspective here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And then Gene, I didn't get any pictures from you, but what's up next?
First,
for
real
you?
quick, look at this. This is this I wanted to show. I grabbed this during my research. It's a George Washington Carver stamp that came out in 1948 on an
Wow.
envelope with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's
Wanted to
the
show that
collector.
real
This guy,
quick.
everything. He's everything.
Well, my next project, the one that's on my table now, I couldn't share any images with you yet, but I'm doing a book on the childhood of Andrew Wyeth. And as you know, because everybody at the Brandywine has been exceptionally generous and resourceful as I've been doing my research, and I couldn't ask for better. It's almost one of those projects I don't want to end because I'm enjoying it so much. It's a dream project of mine. So it's called The Apprenticeship of Andrew Wyeth, and it tells a lot about his earlier days. And it, of course, takes you beyond that, but it's centered around those early years and his relationship with his father and his family. And then finally, Betsy. So I'm supposed to hand everything in. I'm illustrating and writing that, and I'm supposed to hand everything in by May. And usually in publishing, when you hand something in, it's out about a year from that point because it has to go through the whole printing process, and they put it in a certain release season and things like that.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to that very much. I know at Brandywine and I know how much research has gone into that. So, and Frank, I'm sure he'll send you a copy when he's finished. When it finally comes out.
Maybe he'll sign it this time.
Oh, maybe if you're lucky.
Book was his book. The Rip book he sent me. I kept it.
Oh my gosh.
But somebody asks, Frank, what are your favorite breakdance moves?
Yeah, that's what I was
Can you
gonna
do
say.
them for us? My brother asks that for you.
I see it as questions directed to you as well, Gene. Do you?
Mine is no.
Okay.
I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna do it for you now. It's spinning on the floor. You might not be able to see it, but I'm gonna do it for you. All right,
my man. Good job.
Did you see it?
Good job. Good job. No,
This
my
is-
break isn't over. I leave it to Gene now.
Actually, you can see video. There are video clips of Frank and who were you the background dancer for? What was her name?
I used to dance for Sybil and I danced for Sugar Hill Gang. Yeah, back in
Wow.
the day.
Yeah.
You'll see if you look.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, if you Google Sybil, Don't Make Me Over, you'll see me dancing in there. If you have Rap Mania, you'll Rap Mania. If you Google Rap Mania, you'll see me dance with the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Cool.
We
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
too many breakdancing artists that we interview, I have to say. You may be the first, right? That's really, that's great. Amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, so thank you so much, Gene and Frank, for doing this program here with us this evening. As I
Thank
said,
you.
we did record it and we will be putting it up on Brandywine's YouTube channel in just a couple weeks. So if you want to share it with friends or if you missed any of it, or you want to go back and relive Gene's breakdance move, you'll be able to do all of that.
I'm sorry you missed it. It was just I got too enthusiastic and it was below the screen. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Bless your heart, man. You still got it though.
yeah.
I'll turn off the screen sharing, but thank you both again so much. This really has been a lot of fun, and I feel like we've learned about George Washington Carver, which was part of our goal, but then also we've learned quite a bit about the research, the writing, the illustrating, drawing, sketching, all of it that goes into a very successful children's picture book. So we're very happy to have this book at Brandywine. It'll be on view till February 28th. So I hope some folks are able to come.
That's my daughter's birthday.
Oh, good.
Tiffany's birthday. Right,
All right.
Yeah.
All
There you
right. Well,
go. There you go.
exhibition on view through that date. So please do come and see it. And if you do miss it, you can get the book. It is available in Brandywine shop as well as many others, I'm sure.
Where books are sold.
Where all books are
Wherever
sold.
books are sold. Yeah.
Right. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.